Now you can see me. Okay, so I was working on the banners, didn't quite get through, so I'll have to do those manually, or we'll just talk them through as we get there. But we are doing the nonfiction book club. So tonight is "Surviving the Economic Collapse" by Manny Ferfal Aguirre. I'm sorry, Fernando Ferfal Aguirre. And let's see who else. Oh, Roaming Prepper, welcome. And Uncle Al, me, Texas Redleg. Hey, Texas Redleg, how are you? Sorry, I missed you on the live the other night. Apartment Prepper, hey, how are you? But anyhow, we're talking about surviving the economic collapse with Fernando Ferfal Aguirre. Let me start off with something real quick. I just want to let me grab my Bible. I'll grab. Most people don't like the New American Bible, so let me grab a. This is the Revised Standard Translation, and I'm going to go to Joshua 1:9 and see if I can find that real quick. We'll start off with that. Got to put my glasses back on. Come on, Joshua, where are you? Should be back here. Oh, well, there he is. Joshua 1:9. Okay, so Joshua 1:9 says, have I not commanded you? Be strong and of good courage. Be not frightened, neither be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. So the reason I want to start off with that is I want to kind of caution you. There's something going around, and supposedly a German diplomat in the Bundesrat said something about you will remember where you were on September 24th. There's a lot of people saying that he misspoke. There's a lot of people believing that something's going to happen. I don't know. The way I look at it is all the hype we went through for Y2K and it didn't happen. All the hype we went through for the end of the Mayan calendar, it didn't happen. September 1st, 2001 was followed by a 10-year anniversary on the attacks of Benghazi in 2011. And 9/11, 2021, nothing happened. I don't like it when people give specific dates and get everybody all kind of riled up. We should be on our guard all the time. Hello, SSR. And hello, Michael. And X24, welcome. But, don't let it drive you. Don't let it do anything to you or scare you or anything else. Just keep on prepping, doing what you think is right for you. The only thing I can find of any kind of historical significance is to remember that the 25th, now it starts at sundown on the 25th. So that's almost, 20, at least a minimum of 24 hours away, is the beginning of Rosh Hashanah. So, that would be the only thing that I would be concerned about at all, would be something happening in the Middle East. But, that's just the way it is. So I'm just kind of want to warn you, don't fall into the trap. Don't have a nervous breakdown. Don't bite your fingernails down to your second knuckle. Just keep on doing what you're doing. And, when you wake up the morning of the 25th, you'll say, man, I'll tell you what, I'm glad I didn't get an ulcer over nothing. So that's kind of where we are. Okay, let's get into the book. Let me get up here way up high. And we're going to start off with the introduction, and welcome to everybody to the Nonfiction Preparedness Book Club. Tonight we're going to be talking about pages 129 to 159. And it starts off with unconventional weapons, and he talks about how to use a chair as a weapon, and how you can pull the chair up and use the legs to hold somebody off. I'm not so sure I would want to use that as an assault weapon, type attacking weapon. Girls, hey, quiet. Thank you. Quiet. Thank you. Somebody set off the driveway alarm, and the girls were letting us know that the alarm went off. I'm sorry about that. But anyhow, he talks about using a chair, grab it by the back, use the legs to protect yourself. And that's got to be for stronger people than me. Maybe when I was a lot younger, that might have worked, but not now. And then the next thing he talks about was using bottles. And he likes the heavy liquor bottles. He likes wine bottles. And he says, of course, it can be used as a cudgel if you don't break it. But what he really, really likes about it is that if you slap it on something at a 45-degree angle, then it does break the bottom off. And it has, it's a sharp instrument you can use to stab and slash and cut. So he likes that. The next one. Yeah, that's true. 3 Chihuahuas. You can't ask for much more than that. I think they're more attuned to the neighborhood than the ring alarm. I've got 3 points of entry around the house that are alarmed, and so if any one of them goes off, the girls go crazy. But now the next one is kind of the Negan weapon, and Negan in The Walking Dead had a baseball bat, Lucille, that he wrapped with barbed wire, and so it was quite a formidable weapon. He also talks about using steel pipe, and I've got in parentheses there a monkey fist. So this is a monkey fist. It's a keychain, basically. This is a 1.5-inch silver, or not silver, but steel ball, and it's all wrapped in 550 cord. So you've got your cordage, you've got this heavy steel ball, and what you do is you just use it like a cudgel. You've got this part in your hand. Actually, it's going to be longer than that because I'm going to have my keys in my hand here. So I've got a fairly good, weapon that I can swing and hit somebody. If you hit somebody on the head with this steel ball, I guarantee you they will feel it, especially if you hit them around the temple or around the base of the back of the neck. And so that's available on eBay. Just put in monkey fist. And hi, Pat. No problem. Welcome. And Prepper Book Club, welcome to you too. So he says you can use either one of those. Now, the advantage to a steel pipe over a baseball bat is sometimes it does have a sharp end, where it's going to be affixed to something else. So that could be sharp, and you could use that as a sharp instrument if you wanted to. But just remember one thing: anytime you swing something like a baseball bat or you swing something like a steel pipe, if you miss, it can take you down. I mean, the momentum can pull you off balance. So, just be aware of that there is a oops, I just got an alert that Moscow is now under lockdown on my computer, that everybody's to stay inside. I wonder what that means. Okay, another one he talks about is pens, pencils, and scissors. And this is on page 160. And, they do make tactical pens. And I strongly recommend that you get a tactical pen. They are so effective that they don't allow them on aircraft. I guess I should have gotten mine out, but it's in my everyday carry bag. But you can get tactical pens and carry those with you. One of the things I really like about tactical pens is that the sharp end, where you're going to use it for stabbing, can also be used to break glass in your car, so that when you are in a wreck or something, if you can't get out, the door's crushed, you need to break the glass, you can use that tactical pen and it will get you out. Yes, apartment prepper, nails in a piece of wood. So same thing, same concept as the barbed wire Negan's Lucille. And that's probably going to be one of the older cudgel type weapons. And so there was one called a Morning Star that was used in the Middle Ages, and it was basically a combination of what Apartment Prepper's talking about and this monkey fist. So what they did was they had a stick, and attached to the end of the stick was something kind of like this monkey's fist, but it had spikes that came out, and the whole thing was to get momentum so that when you hit a knight in armor, those spikes would go through the armor, penetrate through the plate armor, and that's what it was designed for. So shalom. And so, Jewish Redneck Prepper, let me just ask you a real quick question. We started off by there's there's a lot of concern about September 24th, and the only thing I can find anywhere close to September 24th that would be of any concern is at sundown on the 25th, Rosh Hashanah starts. Can you think of any other reasons other than possibly Rosh Hashanah that we might have any problems around the 24th or 25th? Okay, this one's kind of, I put my own comment in here as well. He talks about umbrellas, and you can get fighting umbrellas, and that is, and it was made famous in the United Kingdom. And so they have kind of the handle has basically an épée, which is a very thin bladed sword that would go down the center of the umbrella. So while you were having an umbrella, you also had a sword in a scabbard. And so he thinks that's pretty cool. You can just use the umbrella if you have a fixed umbrella, not one of these short ones like most people carry nowadays. Oh, really? Well, happy birthday. And so other than that, if you have a long umbrella that's all one piece, then what you basically have is you have a fighting stick, and so you can use that to jab and parry and everything else. I have to use a cane to walk, so one of the things that I've always been intrigued with, and there is a cane fighting course. There's a cane fighting school. And rapier, okay, and it teaches you how to use your cane, and there are fighting canes out there. So, and one of the things they do is they have serrations cut into them, so that like if you use it to put it against the neck and you pull on it, it can basically dig into the neck and things like that. So, oh wow, that's fantastic. And so anyhow, that's I thought that was very interesting. And then he also says you can use your nail clipper or a small file. Now, if you're using your nail clipper, what you want to do is you want to pull that file portion out so that you have a stabbing instrument, or I guess you could use the bigger one that's kind of a little bit more blunt on the end and use it as a stabbing instrument too. Pretty much anytime you stab anybody with anything in the face, that's going to really give people a hard time. Oh, really? Yeah, I did not know that. I'll have to check into Cold Steel. They have a spear that looks an awful lot like an assegai, which is what the Zulu used, and it's like $65 at Academy. And I've been wanting one of those for some. I just can't justify having it, but I want one. I want a crossbow too, but I can't justify that either. Just some of the ways things go. So then after that, the next one, come on, dadgummit. There we go. He says you can use a piece of rope or a piece of necktie. And here he's talking about basically turning it into a garrote. If he says it without saying it, a garrote, I should say. But basically he's saying, you're going to take it and put it over somebody's head and then pull. And so that's kind of a garrote. Garrote will have a knot. And the idea behind the garrote is you want to get the knot right at the Adam's apple or underneath. And then when you pull, it snaps that and kills the person almost instantly. And then, of course, if you use a small piece of wire, then you can, basically cut into the neck and the bones and the tissues and the throat and everything else. So, oh yeah. Then the rest of it, he gets into handguns. And one of his first statements I have a problem with, and he says, that sometimes just having it and showing it is a deterrent to other people. Well, here in Texas, the concealed carry class, if you show your weapon and don't fire it, that's considered a threat, and that's a crime. you can be arrested. The only time you're allowed to pull it, you have to pull the trigger. And that can only be, you can only draw to shoot, and you can only shoot to stop imminent bodily harm of you or someone else. So, just showing your gun or pulling it out or anything like that, don't do that. I don't know how other states are, but, that's how it is here. And I'm sure that we can get Texas Red Leg to give us a comment on that as well. He's fairly well read up on it. Hi, Tracy. Welcome. And, yeah. Well, that's true. After the collapse, there's going to be a lot of things that probably won't apply. But in the meantime, we're supposed to train the way that the way that we will fight, and so that it becomes a habit. But sometimes we have to acknowledge the fact that it may not be the same, and we may need to go somewhere else. Are you still with us, Texas Red Leg? Am I giving some good poop there, or is that bad poop? Just get your opinion. He's ex-law enforcement, so he can probably give us a lot. Okay, so next question is basically, do you need a gun? And this begins on page 134. So the rest of it's all going to be about handguns from this point on. And he says, why own a gun? And he gives 3 reasons. 1, self-defense. 2, to stop a bad guy. And 3 is a matter of principle because of the Second Amendment. And, that only an armed population can keep a tyrant from coming to power. And so that's his thoughts about that. Let's see where we are here. And then he gets into a little bit about different types of weapons. Well, one of the things that he talks about that he doesn't talk about, he does talk about it later on in the chapter, that I want to talk about just for a second. If you're a member of our nonfiction book club, that's written by Steve Smith, and the book that we're reading right now is An Appeal to Heaven. But back in it might have been the first one, the reversion or the revision, volume 2, he teaches to always wear it on your cross draw. And he says the reason is because when you walk up to somebody, it's fairly common for you to have your hands folded. Okay, so if your hands are folded like this, you can reach down and draw a lot faster than having to come down here, lift your shirt, and pull out. Which is where I have been. I've always carried it at the 4 o'clock position. Now I've moved it over to where I'm a cross draw, just like Steve Smith talks about. And but that's that's just something that when I think about it, when I was in the car, number one, it's uncomfortable because you got the strap coming across, the lateral strap coming across from your shoulder down to right where the 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock position is. You got your seat belt that comes across the waist, the horizontal one that comes in right there. So if you were going to try to draw it, first you'd have to almost take your seatbelt off before you could draw in the car. And he's talking about some of the instances where people were attacked in their cars. So for that reason alone, that convinced me that his reason plus Steve Smith's to go with the cross draw, and then you don't look that suspicious when you have your arms folded. You don't look like a threat anyway. And okay. He gets into the actions and different types of weapons and everything else. And let me see, comment. It says I have a comment. You have a gun pockets. Oh, okay. In your shirt or jacket. Well, I wear T-shirts 9 months out of the year, so I just have my T-shirt untucked, and it doesn't look, and it doesn't imprint either. And actually, it used to be that if you imprinted, and people could tell that you were wearing a gun, that was considered a threat. So, really strange stuff. But all those laws have changed. So what is an automatic? An automatic, you pull the trigger, it fires. Now, when it fires, you got to remember that you've got a cartridge with a bullet at one end and the primer's at the other end. Oh, wait, I can do that. I can do that fairly easily here. So let me grab one of these. So you've got your bullet. This is the cartridge. This is the bullet at this end. Okay. And down here, you have your primer, which begins the explosive reaction. So a striker of some sort, hits this primer, and when it does, it sets off a small explosion that causes the rest of the gunpowder to explode. Now, remember, when you have an explosion, everything is trying to expand as rapidly as possible. So it's going to kick this bullet down the barrel, and that's what goes down the barrel and towards whatever you want to shoot at. At the same time, there are two primary ways that slide is going to come back. It's either going to come back by what they call recoil. So you've got this as an explosion. Part of the energy from that explosion is being expended by putting the bullet down the barrel. The other part of that energy is being pushed backwards against the slide, which kicks it back to recock the pistol. Then as that happens, it expels your used round. And then as it goes back in, it takes the next one off the top of your magazine, just strips it right off and puts it into what we call into battery, which means it's where it's supposed to be shot, or where it's in the chamber of the pistol and ready to be shot. So that's basically the design of most pistols is going to be blowback, what's called blowback, except for revolvers. In rifles, however, it's different. Most of them are going to be gas operated. There are a couple of blowback 9mm, what they call pistol caliber carbines, but most of them are going to be gas operated. So as the bullet goes down, of course, all that expanding gas is behind it. So you're going to have some sort of a tube somewhere in that barrel that's going to divert some of the gases that are pushing the bullet out and go up and come back, and then it's going to operate some sort of a piston, and that piston is going to push on the it's going to push on the bolt carrier assembly, and that's going to kick it back and eject the bullet. And then, of course, you got a very strong spring, and that's going to push it forward, and the whole cycle repeats. It strips off a bullet, puts it into chamber, and then you start all over again. So that's the difference. You have blowback operated, and you have gas operated. Oh, wow, lots of comments. Prepping by Faith, really good job tonight. Thank you. That was fantastic. For those of you who missed her live, she did another super duper live. And gosh, you got to make plans on being with her. My problem was that I had to have two things going at the same time. I had the iPad here on Prepping by Faith, and I had my cell phone on Nutrient Survival. And so, had two different lives at the same time I was supposed to be at. But, hey, David, welcome. But that was a fantastic interview. Thank you for doing that. And, I don't have it. I took it in the bedroom. I did buy his book that he recommended. He recommended that a little while ago, and I got it better on eBay than I could on Amazon. Amazon was like $25, and on eBay it was like $7 or $8. So, but it's what do you call it? It is Confessions of a Hitman, about the economic downfall. So, okay. Oh, you know what? Prepping by Faith, I took your closing scripture and used it to open here tonight, and just telling people, don't worry about September 24th. Whatever happens. All we can do is sit back and prepare and be ready. So I stole that from you, and I'll give you credit for that. Okay, now then, we do have single actions, and this was originally things like the Army Colt, and you're going to see these a lot. You're going to see these a lot in the original old cowboy movies. So the original revolver, you had to pull the trigger back, and when you pulled the trigger back, then the trigger only had one action, and that was to release the trigger and for it to hit that primer on the cartridge as it came into chamber. And love you. Gosh, I love you. But anyhow, so when you pull the trigger, okay, or actually when you pull the hammer back, what that did was that rotated the cylinder for the revolver and put the next bullet in place in alignment with the barrel and in alignment with the hammer, so that when the hammer hit it, he had a good bullet. And that only worked 6 times. So basically, you had to pull it back every time you wanted to fire. And that's where you see a lot of these guys doing the fanning, where they take their one hand and pull down on the trigger, pull the trigger, fan, pull the trigger. That's that single action that was made famous in the Old West. The original Colt Army was probably one of them. Now, the next one is called a single action, double action. So you can cock it either of 2 ways. You can either, one is you take the slide and hold on to the top of it, and you have your hand around the grip, and you push the slide back. And when you do that, that takes an internal hammer. I have an automatic that has a hammer still. Matter of fact, I have 2 that have hammers still. And so what happens is when you take the slide back, it takes that hammer and opens it up, so that's what you're doing, is you're getting that hammer ready for the first round. Now, once you pull the trigger, then what happens is that hammer strikes the primer on that cartridge that's in chamber, and then starts that whole process of, the bullet goes down, the reaction kicks back, and so as it kicks back, it's taking that slide that you did manually the first time, and that's kicking it back, ejecting the spent cartridge, coming forward, stripping the next cartridge off of the magazine, and putting it into chamber. So all you have to do is pull the trigger again. So that's the double action part of it. Now then, the other one is that on the double action is some guns, you don't necessarily even have to do the initial cock. You can just, as long as it's got a round in the chamber, just pull the trigger, and that takes care of the cocking and the firing at the same time. And then the other one is there are some that are double action only. So, just the action, if you've got a bullet in chamber, then the action of pulling the trigger, your first portion of the trigger pull, and this is going to be a little bit heavier trigger pull, is going to be pulling that hammer back. And then the second portion of that trigger pull lets the hammer go loose. These are usually going to be, you're also going to find them in double action only pistols like the Glock 19, any of the Glocks that use what they call a striker rather than a hammer. And so that's what Glock is famous for now, is their striker system rather than using a hammer. Gunsmoke. Well, I don't know if you're talking about the Western show, or if you're talking about the smoke from the cartridge. We've come a long way since black powder. The modern powder, as a matter of fact, modern powder is so good that they say you no longer need to clean your weapon every time you fire it. I do, but if I have one, I would clean it after every firing, or after every outing to fire. But they say you don't have to. That it's just kind of old now. It burns so well and everything else. Yes, there are some hammerless revolvers. Don't have any. Haven't seen any. Let me see. I want to mention a series that's right up the alley I've been looking for, fashioned after the Army Marine manuals by design for WRL. Joe Dalio, Tactical Wisdom. Okay, let me write that down. I'm a reader, so. Excuse me while I write this down real quick. All right. And let's get back into this. Okay, some of the examples he gave were single action was the Colt M19 1145. Love it. That's what I carried in the Army. And one of the things I can say is now the bad thing about it was it had a slimmer handle, And so it was a single stack. That means that all the bullets were stacked one on top, directly on top of each other. Whereas when you get to a double stack like this, what happens is you can see how it widens up a little bit. So now these go in and they're offset at an angle. So you can get more rounds in this magazine than you can in a single stack. So basically but that requires a thicker handle as well. So the 1911 only had 8 rounds. And I tell you what, one thing I loved about the 1911 is it has a hand grip safety, and then it has a manual safety. So if you don't have that pistol exactly right for firing, you can't pull the trigger. And you got to have that squeeze so that handle safety is engaged. And, it's right underneath the hammer, basically. But love that weapon. Love it, love it, love it. I don't know why the Army replaced it, other than the fact that we were in violation of our NATO agreement. And so our NATO agreement we did back in 1955, and we wanted to standardize all of the weapons and calibers. So we agreed to certain things, like we would have we agreed to a 120 millimeter main gun cannon on the tanks, and we did 105. So we were in violation there. We agreed we were going to have NATO standard 9 millimeter for pistols, and we kept the 45. We argued for the 7.62 millimeter .308 as a standard NATO rifle round and squad type machine gun. And they agreed to that. And then Vietnam came along, and we didn't want to carry those heavy M14s into Vietnam. So we adapted the 5.56 and or .223. And NATO finally gave us that, and now they're all switching to 5.56, and we're switching over to 6.5. So it's crazy. Hi, LG, welcome. Okay, so that's as far as I got with doing these. I only gave myself a half hour to do it, so I got to read the rest of them out of the book. Should have known it would take me a full hour to get that typed in. Let me see where we are. Okay. One of the things you have to understand is that revolvers don't have magazines. You've got 6 rounds, 5 or 6 rounds. You got to actually open it up and pull it out in order to change anything. Now, there is something called a speed loader. So what you can do is you can put 6 rounds into the speed loader, and then when you fired your 6 rounds in your revolver, you don't have to manually eject each one. You flip the cylinder out, eject all 6 at the same time. Then the speed loader has a little thing at the end. So you push all 6 bullets in at the same time, push the button, it inserts them into the cylinder, and then you close the cylinder and you're ready to go. Probably takes about 2 seconds to reload. So you can do that with as many speed loaders as you happen to have. Most of the police departments, before they went over to automatic pistols, carried 2 speed loaders with them all the time. So they had 18 rounds basically. While we're on this, does anybody know the difference and why people in the military especially are really, what can I call it, emphatic about the difference between, I'm sorry, LG. Does anybody know the difference between a magazine and a clip? A lot of people use them interchangeably. Okay, so here's the difference between a magazine and a clip. It's all about where is the spring that pushes the rounds up into the bolt carrier assembly, so they can strip it off and put it into the into chamber, into battery. And so what happens is, if you take a look at the M1 Garand, that was the U.S. Army's primary battle tool in World War II, it had 8 rounds, and they had this little clamshell thing, just a little thing, and they had 8 rounds in it. So I don't know if you've ever heard of M1 thumb, but M1 and M14 thumbs were famous. On the M1, down at the bottom, so if you looked at the top of it, okay, and once you pulled that bolt carrier group back and you looked in, you would see a spring that was down inside. And so it would pop up. And once it popped up, it would lock that bolt from going forward. The only way you could ever get that bolt to go forward is to push down on the spring. So when you did inspection arms, what you had to do is you had to stick your thumb down and push that spring down and then let go of the bolt. And hopefully you got your thumb out of the way before the bolt closed, or else you'd have a bloody thumb. That's called an M1 thumb. And so the M1 used a clip, because the spring that pushed the bullets up was actually in the rifle and not in the magazine. On the other hand, a magazine like this one, okay, has the spring built in down here. And so it's got a spring here that's going to push the bullets up to the top. And that's the difference between a clip and a magazine. This one has its own spring. It can operate, just put it inside the weapon. And the clip, you have to make sure that you're putting it into the right weapon and the right caliber and all that kinds of stuff. And David brings up a well, the clip doesn't feed the magazine. They're two different things. And so it's all, where is the spring? And I think the M1 Garand was the last one that actually was a clip-fed weapon. Now, David has a take on this. And he says, what about a stripper clip? Okay, so remember, we talked about where is the magazine. So in Vietnam, and even today, the 5.56 military rounds come on a clip. So you got 10 rounds that are on this little piece of metal, and the metal has kind of like, it's kind of like you got this track, and underneath it holds them in place, and then on top you've got on either side so that it holds down on the rim. And then what you're going to do is there's something called a spoon. So you put the spoon on the back of the M16 magazine, and you take the clip and just push down on the top, and these come in 10 round clips, push down on the top, and you fed 10 rounds into the magazine. And you do that twice, then you have a full magazine. Back in the early days, now we have 30 round magazines, so you have to do it 3 times. So that's the difference between the two, is where is the spring. Prepper Book Club. So this tells me he knows what he's talking about, because when the M1 Garand, when you finished your 8th round, and that was 30-06, by the way, and it could really bruise your shoulder. But when it fired that 8th round, it also ejected the clip. So it would ping and just throw it up in the air, just like an ejected cartridge. And so that's what he's talking about when he says ping. Well, the bolt carrier slides them into the magazine. No. The bolt carrier strips the round from either the clip or the magazine to put it into battery or into chamber. So both of them do the same thing, in the fact that they're going to hold the ammunition there for the bolt to strip it off and put it in the magazine. The difference between the two is where is the spring located. So with a clip, all you've got is this piece like this with bullets stuck into it like this, and you put it in like this, and the spring is inside the rifle. It pushes the bullets up. With a magazine, it is, now remember this, the clip, all you have is the bottom and each side. That's it. Okay. So you've got a U-shaped thing and the bullets are laying like this. Okay. Then with the magazine here, the spring is inside here. So that's the difference between the two. Where is the spring? Take care, Uncle Al. Be safe, please. But the 30-06, yeah, it is. I'm still kind of partial to 30-30 for short range, and then for longer range at 270. But okay, let's see where we are. Now then, for those of you who are like I am, a little bit older and don't have quite the muscles, when you get your weapon and your magazine and you want to load it, once you get down to where you're at the maximum capacity, getting around back into here can be kind of challenging. You got to be very strong, and so there is a tool that you set on top of the magazine, and then you push down. And when you push down, then you can slide it around into your magazine. So it's fantastic. I think it's called an Annie, but that helps an awful lot when you're loading magazines. Yeah, they taught you wrong. Both of them feed the bolt. Well, no, I'm going to take that back. There is one exception, and I told you what the exception was. You have a stripper clip. Okay, when the military 5.56 rounds come 10 bullets to a stripper clip. You put the stripper clip onto a spoon, and then you push down. So you're loading the magazine from the clip. That portion is correct, but that's the only place I can think of where that is correct. When most people talk about clips versus magazines, they're mistakenly calling this a magazine a clip. Hula, that's what I wanted to think of. Thank you. Hula's what I have. Actually, I've got one, and it fits 3 or 4 different calibers, so it's great. And so it's just a fantastic tool to have. Take care, David. Please be safe. Let me get my glasses on, and we'll see where we are in the book. Okay, it talks about safety rules. Number 1, always keep the weapon pointed in a safe direction unless you're aiming it at somebody. So, and then even if you're aiming it at somebody, never put your finger on the trigger until you're ready to commit to fire, because you don't want an accident to happen. So, you're pretty, and the other thing is what I was taught, think of it, you've got your hand around the grip. And if you have your finger and you're pointing at somebody, then that's what you're doing with your pistol. You're pointing, and as you're pointing, you're getting very close to target. And so if you use your finger to point where the target is and off the trigger, then you can commit to the trigger, and your chances are you're going to be very close to being on target. So, okay. No, it's done totally outside of the weapon. Totally outside the weapon. Your magazine is not in the weapon as you're using the stripper clip. It's outside of the weapon. Let me see here. Rule number 3, always keep the gun unloaded until ready to use. And I guess there are 2 schools of thought on that. When they talk about capacity nowadays, they're talking about 8+1 or 18+1. You'll hear these types of comments being made. What that is how many rounds are in the magazine and how many rounds are in chamber. So if you have 18+1, that means this holds 18 rounds, and then you've got 1 round already in the chamber ready to go. Take care, Prepping by Faith. And so, the controversy is, do you carry one in the chamber at all times, uh, so that you're prepared to go? All you have to do is pull the trigger, or do you keep your chamber empty, which is a safety issue? And so, there are those who say you have to keep around in the chamber all the times, and then there are those of us who have practiced drawing and charging at the same time. And so, for me, I prefer to keep one out. I take safety over anything else. It doesn't take me that much longer to chamber it. And the other good thing about that is it's just a fantastic safety thing, that even if you drop your weapon, nothing's going to fire. Take care, LG. Oh no, you're telling apartment prepper to go. Be safe. Okay. I'm going to kind of expand on that a little bit, and there's one more rule. Always make sure you know what is behind your target you're shooting at. And there are too many times that somebody has shot somebody, and they shot him in soft tissue, and the round went completely through and injured somebody else. You are responsible for wherever that bullet goes. If you pull the trigger, you're responsible. And so one of the first things you got to do is don't shoot until you have a clear target and you're on target. Number two, whatever is behind your target is okay. There's a brick wall, there's a car, there's something, but you're not going to have another innocent person standing directly behind him. He goes into a big thing about he prefers to have his in the chamber all the time. Oh, here he is. He's talking about be sure of your target now on page 140. Talks about on page 142, don't hesitate. You've got to have courage. You've got to be able to do what you need to do. And, so I have a personal philosophy about this that kind of falls in line with him. We have 22 suicides in the military every day from veterans who came back from Iraq and in Afghanistan. And so you change. When you shoot somebody, you change. If you were of a right mind before, you won't be of a right mind afterwards. And this is a conversation I'm having with Prepping with Sarge, and he's a police psychologist. And the act of shooting somebody is an act of insanity, regardless of what anybody else says. And so it's going to change you permanently. You took a life. It's going to change you, especially if you have convictions about what's right and wrong. And but it's just something that you have to kind of adapt to. In Maccabees, in First and Second Maccabees, when this is after the Babylonian captivity, after the temple's been torn down and everything else, and they're returning back. Nebuchadnezzar's son lets the Israelites and the Judeans return back to Jerusalem, Judah, and Israel. And the Maccabees are basically kind of like the judges of before, and but they become a fighting. Think of them as a Knights Templar. But when they go to battle, after they're in battle and they injure another human being, they have to purify themselves for 7 days and stay away from people for 7 days after a battle in order to ritualistically purify themselves. And I think that's something we need to take into consideration even today. He says, but what he's talking about here in the book is you've got to be willing to make that decision, his life or mine, or her life or mine, and do what's necessary to save yourself or those around you that you've been given charge to protect. He talks about being scared, and yes, you are scared. Somebody is trying to take you out. You've got to respond by trying to take them out. And that is extremely scary. There's no doubt about that whatsoever. He says people ask him what gun they should get, and he says buy a Glock. And I'm not that sold on Glocks, but everybody else is. So I think the most popular gun right now is a Glock 19. I went to the local gun dealer in the town here, and right after the lockdown. And I walked in, and usually, there was sometimes there was one other person in the store. I walked in the day after the lockdown was declared, and there were probably 20 people standing in line. And I had special ordered something, and he saw me. He says, "Okay, Lee, I'll take you over. Come over here. I'll get you out of here." And so I was talking to this one lady. She was a doctor, and she was buying her first handgun. Didn't know how to operate it. Didn't know anything. And it was a 9mm Glock 19. I said, "Why?" She says, "Because that's what my father told me to get." I said, "Okay." And so about 6 months later, I went back to that very same, because he buys and sells, and he had at least a dozen Glock 19s on the counter. He was selling as second owner because of the fact they don't have a manual safety. It's the you've got that two-step trigger. Pull into to cock it and then keep on pulling and you fire it, and so that's the only safety it has. So if you don't have a holster that protects the entire trigger guard and trigger assembly, you can have an accidental discharge. And so a lot of people, once they find that out, don't like that. You are absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct. And one thing that I can tell you is people who were cowards 1 hour ago turn into the biggest heroes sometimes now. And just the vice versa. Somebody who was the biggest hero an hour ago now can be squatting down in a corner crying like a baby. So no, every situation is different. A lot of things come into it, and if anybody tells you this is what I will do, that they're lying to you. That's why the Army emphasizes so much that you go through these drills so that it becomes automatic repetition. You're just doing it automatically. Your body does certain things, and your mind is disengaged from it. It becomes a habit. And I think that's the thing. And that's where we need to be in our self-defense as well. As we need to train to such a degree that we have automatic skills that just go. Hi, Kill It and Grill It. How are you doing? Yeah, please be safe. Highways are crazy. Had 2 wrecks this morning going to my men's breakfast, and it took me 45 minutes to drive what is normally a half-hour drive. According to the computer on my pickup, it said I got 3 miles to the gallon gasoline consumption this morning. So anyhow, I like the Sig Sauer series. I like Beretta. I like Ruger. I like Smith & Wesson. Smith & Wesson M&P Shield is a fantastic little piece. Let me see who else. Browning makes a good weapon. Colt makes good weapons. Glock's a good weapon. I just, people don't like that double action, that twice pull trigger or two-stage trigger. Yeah, he talks about the Beretta 92s. That's the one that the Army just got rid of. So you can find those probably used, used military Beretta 92s out there somewhere. I'm quite certain. Take a class. Take lots of classes on safety and firing and everything else. Strongly encourage you. Yeah, the Glock 19 has 15+1. And then he recommends that you wear slightly oversized clothes so you can conceal the fact that you're carrying. And then he talks about, the Highway Patrol for a while was using 357 SIG. So 357 SIG is kind of in between a 357 and a 9mm, or 380 actually. So it's a shorter cartridge, not quite as much powder, but it's called 357, and it's a shorter one. It's designed for automatic pistols, whereas the standard 357 is designed for a revolver. So it has, you can tell if you take a look here, what you see is the casing itself is pretty much a straight line, and it's got an indentation where the ejector is going to reach in right here, and it's going to reach in here and pull it out of the chamber and eject it. With a revolver type weapon, this portion here, instead of being in line with this, is going to be slightly larger diameter so that it can't go all the way through the barrel. I mean, all the way through the cylinder when you drop it in. So that's the difference between the two of them. Develop your awareness of other people. You know, you don't want to draw too quick and you don't want to draw too slow. So learn to smell and listen to your surroundings. Don't worry about people that look poor. Yeah, there's a lot of people that can throw you off with what they look like compared to what they are. And, you know, women can also be a threat to you. So make sure you're aware of that. Carry your gun at all times. And let me see. So here's his rules. Where's number one? Number one is be aware of your surroundings. Number two is carry your gun at all times. Number three, a gun in your hands 10 seconds earlier beats the world's fastest draw. Number four, carry your gun where it's easily accessible. That's like I was talking about. Now I'm doing cross draw instead of 4 o'clock draw. It's not target practice. You know, you should be realizing what you're shooting at when you're shooting, even if you're shooting at a target. Keep your eyes on the target at all times, and not only your target, but what's behind your target. Learn to shoot and draw with either hand. That's my weakness. I cannot shoot left-handed. And then rule number 8 is gunfighting is not shooting, it's fighting. And remember that and act that way. Shoot first and shoot as much as needed. So we're taught to double tap, and that means pull the trigger twice, you know, on the same area. And so let me see here. Where are we? Oh, that's great. I have to check into that. I did not know that. Thank you for that piece of information there. Yeah, I like the Smith & Wesson M&P Shield. It's a fantastic little piece. And I have so many magazines. What I did was I got some paint, and I paint what the weapon is on the bottom, so I can make sure I grab the right magazine for the right weapon. But as you can tell, SWMP. But anyhow, so I'm kind of partial there. If you don't have any bullets left, use your gun as a clobber, as a tool, as a cudgel. Take care, Rob. Have a nice evening. And it's your main weapon. I disagree with your handgun as your main weapon. To me, and you know, my handgun only got me back to my primary weapon, which was my rifle. And so I'm one of those guys who thinks that the rifle is a primary weapon, handgun is secondary. But if the handgun's all you got, then that becomes your primary weapon. 9 times out of 10, the presence of a gun defenses the situation. Well, like I said, in Texas, that'll get you in trouble before SHTF. And so, you know, if you're going to show it, you might as well draw it. So let me see what else. And he talks about calibers. It talks about 22 long rifle can be a very dangerous round if you shoot it in the right place, and that's absolutely correct. Remember that it almost got President Reagan. That's what was used against him. And now he does talk. He goes into the rest of it. Is he's talking about defending yourself against weapons. And so one of the things that they used to teach was if somebody has a revolver or a hammer showing automatic pistol, that what you wanted to do is you wanted to try to grab the gun and put this piece of flesh in between the hammer and the bullet, so that when he pulls the trigger, it cuts into your hand instead of hitting the bullet. And you know, that's I don't know. I guess it's better than being shot. Good night, Rob. Then the second thing is he talks about if you do it on an automatic pistol, if you grab a hold of that slide. Now remember the whole thing. The bullet fires, the gas from that and the recoil drives that slide backwards, which ejects the shell and then puts the next one in battery. Well, the problem is, take care, Pat. So what he says is, if you have your hand over that slide and don't allow it to eject that round and go back and then pick up the next round and pull it back in, you basically incapacitated that weapon. He's going to have to manually charge it in order to do the next shot. And yeah, that's true. But what happened to that shot when he did pull the trigger, that you're stopping the action of the recoil right now. So that's kind of it for what we did for this evening. So next time we're going to do long guns, starting on page 160, and we will go all the way up to. We'll talk about handgun or long guns. So we're going to do just 21 pages this next time, be from 160 to 181. So with that, does anybody have any questions before we call it an evening? Okay, then we will end with my normal Numbers 4. Number 6. Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord let his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. And the Lord look upon you kindly and grant you peace. So with that, look forward to seeing you all next Tuesday. Don't forget, the third Saturday, we have the Grow Your Channel meeting. Tomorrow night at 9 o'clock Central is Van City Preppers live. And then Friday night, we have another live with Prepping by Faith. Please don't forget, also at 5 o'clock Central, every day this month, Nutrient Survival, ta-da, is giving away fantastic drawings. You just have to be present to win. We started out with only 87 people on the first. Today, there were like 425 people there. So your chances, 1 in 425, that's a pretty good chance. They've been giving away on average anywhere from $100 to $250 worth of prizes every day to one lucky person. So go to Nutrient Survival at 5 p.m. Just listen to the live. When they tell you the word, type the word in all caps, and then they do the random generator thing, and then you have a chance of winning some fantastic long-term food storage supplies. So no problem. And I still owe you a video as well. So, okay, with that, thank you all. Have a wonderful evening. Remember, we're all in this together so we can come out the other end together. Be kind, polite, and respectful to each other, because togetherness is the key. Take care. Bye-bye.